Hello and welcome to another edition of Leafless, Not Lifeless. I'm Sharon Benjamin, your host. Thank you so much for joining me. Here is a place where I talk to those who have seemed to have been leafless, but they were actually growing and developing, or they were helping others to do the same. So my guest today is Samantha Castro. Thank you, Samantha, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
I was so impressed. I met Samantha not too long ago, and I was just so impressed because she is one of those active young people. And we're going to talk about all of her work and what she's doing, what she's looking to do in the future, and talk about, just get a gauge as to what she's seeing with other young people in terms of social justice. Again, Samantha, thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. So first of all, I won't ask you your age now, but as I said, you are very young, and you are so active socially. I am so impressed. As I was thinking of you earlier, I thought about the young people who were really active with Dr. King, and there were so many of them who were active. And I know that there are active young people now, and you can tell me more about some of that as time goes on. But again, thank you so much. And I want to ask you, how is it that you decided to become so socially minded, socially active? Was it your parents, your teachers, your peers, or was it just what you saw in the culture?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to take part in this. I'm truly honored. Um, Social activity, man, I think I was born as someone that had a really deep sense of responsibility over a lot of things. I'm the oldest in my family, and my mom is a single mother, so I always felt the need to be on top of things and make sure everyone is okay. And
Yes.
my mom always made sure to prioritize in us a sense of community and a sense of lending a helping hand to others and to never be ashamed or embarrassed or hesitant when it comes to helping others. So definitely my mother is a big inspiration when it comes to always trying to be helpful and trying to give a helping hand to others. But when it comes to being socially active, I think what triggered it for me was I was very young. I think I was around in fifth grade or something like that. So maybe 9 or 10 years old. Um, and this is when Trayvon Martin was murdered. And I remember seeing it on TV. And that was the first time I saw something that I think I was conscious enough to understand that this is a social injustice. Like this is something that should not be allowed. And there has to be people that are doing something, right? And I remember asking my mom at the time, I'm like, well, how does stuff like this happen? Why isn't anyone getting in trouble? What's going on? And she's like, well, sometimes people have to go out and do things themselves. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And it flipped my head upside down because I think growing up, especially as a young person in America, you have this idea that police or the government or institutions, etc., are always going to be able to come in and sweep up a mess or solve a problem. And while certain institutions can do that, I think we have to be very mindful and always remember that at the end of the day, especially within this country and even globally now, you have to have a personal sense of responsibility towards each other. And you have to have a sense of, I want to make my community better. I want to help people around me. And the more people I'm able to help, the more it comes back to me and helps me and my family. So I definitely think it was seeing social injustices at a very young age. I think it was the way my mother raised me. And I think also we're blessed to live in an area where we get a lot of information and we get we're kind of in the epicenter of
Yeah. Yes.
activity.
Yes.
So I think being able to see other people, other young people or even older people be socially active without, I don't want to say without fear. I think a lot of people show a lot of bravery. And I think it's also important to acknowledge that being socially active is scary and it can be something that is a bit daunting, but it's always important to remember that bravery is something that happens when you're afraid. It isn't something that happens when you're not afraid. So I think that too. I try to be brave.
Yeah, so I guess when you're saying it just if you allow it to, it catapults you into action.
100%.
Yes, that's a very good point. So it sounds as if you had a combination of reasons as to why you became socially active. And at 10 years old, because fifth graders at
Yeah.
fifth grade, I don't know that there are a lot of fifth graders who are concerned about, what's going on in society. And you mentioned different institutions. So again, it looks as if you saw some of what, yes, you saw institutions, but maybe you saw institutions that were not necessarily taking care of certain injustices.
Yeah, I think certain institutions and when I say institutions, I think of things like foundations or, public services or even like universities and schools. I think a lot of times these institutions can be very helpful in sparking an idea or an interest. And they could be very helpful when it comes to understanding history or philosophy or what it means to be socially active in like a theoretical sense. But I think where a lot of institutions fall short is the practical side of it, of doing action and not just talking about doing action. And I think for a lot of young people or people in general, especially in the age of social media, I think we get very much caught up in the idea that learning is action or that, advocating is action or awareness is action. And those three things are so important, but those three things are just, kind of cracking the door open. You're not really walking anywhere with those things. So I think for me, seeing, different schools or foundations or at that young age watching the news and seeing things like we have to like fight against racism and it's like, oh, that's a great idea, but like then that's it. And that was very frustrating for me. It's still frustrating for me. And so that's when I decided, or when I began thinking about, I need to be more active than just reading a book about an idea.
So the idea, that's a good point. And I like that. It sounds as if, you look at some of what is being said or taught as theory rather than practice.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And theory is important, it gives you a
It is
backbone,
important. It is important.
but it's not the only part of being socially active. And I think that's the switch that a lot of us need to turn on.
Yes, I want to. One of your part of your degree included comparative ethnic and race studies. How did that kind of maybe perhaps help you in some of your thinking, or was it your thinking, part of your thinking that helped you to say, I need to take this, I need this course, I need to do this?
Okay. So that was a minor. That's how it's part of my degree. And I had transferred into Rutgers and I saw that it was an option to take as a minor. And immediately I was like, okay, I need that. And the reason why I thought it was important is because I think it's always very beneficial to look at what's been successful and what has shown to be an effective form of action. And for me, at least personally, the classes I took to fulfill that minor was all majority based off Africana studies and specifically American Black resistance. Excuse me. And so for when I did take that course and the way it's helped me and continues to help me is I'm always able to look back at, specifically for me, Black women that have made a lasting impact. You have people like Ida B. Wells, you have people like, we all know Rosa Parks, we have people like Bell Hooks, you have people like, the list goes on.
Angela Davis, Angela
Yeah,
Davis.
Angela Davis is my favorite. Yes, yes. So you have these women that not only have theory, or as to Shakur, you have people that have theory but have action as well. And they're women and, in general, people that, within our own history in this country have dealt with the problems that we continue to deal with today and found ways to help us find a lasting solution. And so with that minor, I was able to look at the young activists at that time. They were all very young when they first participated in social activism. Now we look at them and like they've either passed or like they're in their later years and we're like, oh, they're like distinguished like thinkers. But at the time they were, in their 20s. They were a bunch of like, rebel kids that were causing trouble. And so for me, it was very inspiring to see that people my own age were, standing up to white supremacy, we're standing up to racism, we're standing up to, sexism, and did it in such an unapologetically authentic way. And so whenever I do talk to other young people about being socially active, I always love to bring up those people that inspired me, like, Angela Davis, that, was very unapologetic with the way that she is anti-racist, with the way that she is an abolitionist. And, it's always important to find strength within those people whenever you feel a bit daunted or unmotivated, because, social activism is a lifelong journey, and I think when you're very deep in it and it's something you do every day, you can get a bit frustrated, and you can hit a wall sometimes when it comes to motivation. So it's always good to go back to see the history of these people and to see where they are now, and to understand, like, they did not give up. They have not given up, and they will continue to fight for equality, for equity, for justice until their dying breath. And even afterwards, they leave a legacy that we can continue to look back on.
Exactly.
So that's why I was very grateful to be able to take that minor.
If I had known you were going to mention those ladies and Angela Davis, I would have had a picture prepared that my husband took of me when we visited the African American Museum. So, standing there in front of her picture.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, she's amazing. God bless her. She's amazing.
Yes. So you are very active right now. So as an adult, so coming forward from that 10-year-old student, that fifth grader, you actually put together and started some real action. So as you moved forward, what was that moment that made you say, okay, this is it, I'm doing it?
Um, it took a few steps, because I think for some people, they're able to take the ground running, and part of it is luck. We always have to be aware of that. They have very good fortune. They're able to, like, sprint. For me, it took a couple of missed trials, and then I finally got my feet on the ground. So initially, I had initially gone to undergrad in Hawaii, and in Hawaii, the demographic there is primarily Pacific Islander or Asian, Micronesian. And so there wasn't a big Black, brown population. And as someone that grew up in, like, the New Jersey, New York area, it was very shocking to be somewhere where I was not just a minority, but like a hyper minority. And so at the school I went to, Hawaii Pacific University, I started a Black student union. And that was the first time I saw, like, a plethora of Black students from my school show up. Like, people I'd never seen. I didn't even know we had this type of, like, population. And so that was, I think, the first time I felt like, okay, like, this is something that people need. Like, people need to feel supported. People need to feel like there's some sense of organization. And so that was the first thing that kind of, like, sparked something in me, I guess, like, something that felt like, okay, this is tangible. Like, I can do something beyond just, like, I don't know, like, learning. And so I had to transfer out of Hawaii, and I went to Rutgers. And then the summer of 2020 hit. That's when, like, we were kind of in lockdown, COVID was going on, and people were a bit disconnected. And then that summer, George Floyd was murdered. And one of my friends texted me, and he was like, Sam, there's protests all over the country, and, like, we have to do something in solidarity, and yada yada yada. And I was like, okay, then, like, plan something, I'll be there. And he's like, I don't know how to do it. And I was like, well, I don't know how to do it either, but that never stopped me. So I'm a lifelong learner. And so I was able to contact the local NAACP. I got in contact with the cathedral in Perth Amboy. I got in contact with MAPSO Freedom Schools, with Make the Road New Jersey. I contacted our local recreation department. I was able to set up roadblocks for safety. So I was able to arrange a protest within 5 days. And I cannot tell you how I did that. Those 5 days felt like 3 months. Like, it was like nonstop meetings, nonstop planning, nonstop thinking. But, thank goodness, alhamdulillah, I was able to arrange a successful protest with the help of my peers, with the helps of all these organizations, these grassroots organizations. And it was attended by over 1,000 people in Perth Amboy, New Jersey. It was a march of solidarity. So we were able to walk through the main streets of Perth Amboy, like I said, barricaded for our safety. I was able to ensure and get a promise from the police department that there would be, you know, no kind of escalation involved, no kind of like arrest involved. You know, many of the police officers joined the march and like walked the entirety with us. We were able to stop in front of the police department, and we all had a moment of silence. Well, it was, I believe, close to 10 and a half minutes. And that's the same amount of time that George Floyd was pinned down to the ground with a knee on his neck. And so we were all able to lay down in silence for 10 and a half minutes. Some of us in the same position that George Floyd was murdered in, some of us sitting. So that was when I was like, oh, I can like organize. I didn't know I could do that. And so that was an incredibly self-inspiring moment for me. You know, it kind of like knocks me off my feet that like to some people I'm seen as like a leader or seen as a social activist because I feel very normal. You know, I like to remind myself I'm just a girl. I try to I try to practice humility.
Yes,
Um, but it was a very proud moment for me, and it made me realize that, you know, as long as you connect with like-minded individuals, as long as you can connect with those grassroots organizations that do have a history of social justice, that have a history of social activism, you can do anything, you know. You just, I guess, don't be afraid and don't believe that you are an unlearned person or that you are someone that's unqualified to do something.
yes,
Because at the end of the day, social activism is about being treated as a human being and being treated with equity and respect. And that's something that should be, and you know,
should be
sometimes not given
peaceful.
to all of us, but should be given to all of us, and something that
Yes,
we're all entitled to.
yes. I think I missed, let's see if this is, now this one, is this when you were at the University of Hawaii?
No, ma'am, that was at City Hall at the end of the
This
protest.
was at the end of the protest.
Yes, ma'am. Those were all of my friends, most of them classmates that I went to Perth Amboy High School with that helped me organize the event.
That is amazing. And this picture as well. This is, there you are on the front
Yes, that's an
line.
Angela Davis quote. I am no longer accepting the things I can't change. I am changing the things I can no longer accept.
I love it. That is awesome. That is awesome. That is so citizen leader.
Mhm.
Yes, you are considered a citizen leader. Describe that for us, if you can.
Oh man, I will attempt. I will attempt. Um, I think a citizen leader is someone that is organized, is someone that is brave enough and courageous enough to talk to people and to talk to people that might have a different opinion than you, that might have different strategies or different solutions to the same problem than you. I think a citizen leader is someone that always advocates for their community. And I don't think that necessarily has to be like your backyard community, as in like your hometown or your neighborhood. I think it can be your state. I think it could be your country. Um, I think it's someone that prioritizes all the people that are around them, whether you know them or not, people that share the same space as you, people that particularly are disenfranchised, that are the minorities. So people with disabilities, people with um, older people, which we often forget about. So like the elderly, young children, you know, people of color. I think a citizen leader is someone that isn't afraid to advocate for others, even if they believe themselves to not be qualified to do that. And I think it's always very important to check in with your community to understand that while you might have great ideas and great strategies, that at the end of the day, you don't represent millions of people. If that makes sense. You
Yes,
can't just assume that what you believe is right is something that the majority believes is right or something that everyone believes is right. So it's always good to check in with your community members and always try to gauge, what do you think is important? What are problems that we should be facing? What are some solutions that you think we should be advocating for? Because a lot of times you don't know everything. You know, you have to kind of ego check and understand that you don't
yes,
have the answer to all
yes.
problems. So I think a citizen leader is someone that's very connected to community, someone that is always willing to learn more and always willing to talk to others to gain a different perspective.
So how do you make sure, and you're mentioning gauging the community, knowing the community, what are some things that you do to make sure you are gauging the community so that whatever social action practices you want to put in place can actually be implemented?
Yeah, I people are gonna hate this one, but going to city council meetings and like I know those can be very lengthy and they can sometimes not be the most entertaining evening you will ever have. But it is always, always, always so important to understand what your local government is doing. Your local government is what directly impacts your life. I think we're all very practice in understanding what our national leaders are doing. I think a lot of times people are keeping a very close eye on like our presidents, our Supreme Court justices, on the House of Representatives, on our senators, and that's amazing. That's necessary work. But I think it's also important to understand that your mayor and your city council and your school board are always making decisions. They always have meetings, and these decisions and these meetings and the way that they decide to use the budget that comes out of your taxes, um, they will make these decisions and sometimes make them without any kind of audience that is comprised of the local community. I've been to numerous city council meetings where, they're using like millions of dollars to like fund some things that I believe for my community would not be beneficial. That I believe, especially coming from a community of color, certain things that would take away from our sense of equity or take away from our sense of justice or take away from our sense of safety. And so I think for one, going to your local government, understanding what decisions are being made there is always, always important to gauge what your local government may be doing. When it comes to understanding what the average person wants, I think we have to bring back the idea of third spaces and community. I think it's important to go to community events and to talk to people that aren't necessarily your friend or your neighbor. I think it's important to, and Perth Amboy has them a lot. They have like family days or they have, music at the waterfront and things like that. And, it might sound cheesy when you read about it, but when you're able to go to those things or even like an NAACP meeting, if that medium is more comfortable for you, you're able to talk to other people and you're able to understand what the common issue is, because a lot of times you'll bring up a topic and everyone's like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. And like you'll gauge to see, oh, like this is something people are really interested in. This is something that people want to talk about. So I think literally talk to people, literally talk to your neighbor, talk to your community member, have those, excuse me, have those difficult conversations. And when I say difficult, I mean uncomfortable, because no conversation is genuinely difficult. It's more so we're often scared about stepping on each other's toes or being a bit rude. But growth happens in discomfort.
Yes.
Learning happens in discomfort, and sometimes we have to be uncomfortable so that we can eventually become comfortable.
Exactly. Yeah. So talk to us about the executive order that the mayor signed regarding enhancing safety
Hmm.
and your part in that.
Of course. So that executive order was issued almost 2 years after the protest. So following the protest for George Floyd's murder, um, I got into contact with the Citizens Campaign where I currently work, and Carol Dorch Wright of the Citizens Campaign reached out to me. And she was like, Samantha, what you did was great, love it, but what are you going to do next? And I was like, what do you mean, what am I going to do next? I protested. And she was like, well, yeah, but like I said earlier, protest is just a way to raise awareness, and like, what is the action after that awareness? And I was like, oh, okay. And so I took the Citizens Campaigns training in no blame leadership. And what it emphasizes is trying to find pragmatic solutions that already exist somewhere else and having those implemented within your town. And the reason why that's so beneficial is that a lot of times when you come in with a new idea or something that's deemed innovative, you kind of hit a wall because your city or your state isn't aware of like how much would it cost when it comes to budget or like who would it impact, how effective is it, et cetera, et cetera. And to be completely honest, a lot of times they will bring up those questions just to like stall any kind of progress. And so I was introduced to this public safety executive order that had been drafted by a few lawyers here at the Citizens Campaign. And, it was a public safety focused executive order. And I had to advocate for it for almost 2 years. And like I said, this was something that shows evidence of success, has like a history of successful adoption. And so for almost 2 years, I was consistently going to city council meetings, consistently going to meetings at the YMCA, consistently speaking to the mayor and the police chief and the policing unions. And I think that's a big thing to stress about this executive order, is that it did take a lot of dedication and it did take a lot of time. And I think if I at any point decided, oh, I can't do this, I'm tired, like I'll skip that meeting or that, it might not have gone through as seamlessly as it was able to. So this executive order was adopted, I believe, August 2021, I believe, officially, but our meeting started January 2022. And so essentially the executive order, like I said, is based off public safety, and it's a three-pronged system. I love talking about it because I want other people from other towns to be like, I want that executive order, and to adopt it in their town. So firstly, it's based off de-escalation. It's based off this idea of shifting our warrior culture policing into a guardian culture policing, to have a police force that's focused on public safety rather than punitive action. And so firstly, all police officer promotions will be partially based off the successful implementation and practice of de-escalation training tactics and practices. So that already gives incentive to officers who may not believe de-escalation is important. Now it's running your paycheck. So what are you gonna do? Secondly, it requires an annual progress report from the police department that highlights any de-escalation practices, trainings, or tactics that have been adopted. And that's so that the police department is held accountable for how much de-escalation is used in their training. A couple years ago, the national average for de-escalation training and force training was 8-1. So 8 hours of force training to 1 hour of de-escalation training. And so the goal of that progress report is to highlight that discrepancy and like that drastic ratio, and to try to bring it to where it's equal, and then one day de-escalation is prioritized over any other kind of tactic. And then finally, the creation of the Public Safety Citizens Advisory Board. And essentially that board would recommend different de-escalation tactics and practices, as well as review the annual progress report. And that board features two de facto police officer members of the board. So they are non-voting members, but they're there to give input on different trainings, different tactics, on different practices that have been adopted, or even the general attitude of the police department, because some tactics or trainings may already be implemented, but in a different way. So it's always good to kind of have someone that can give you kind of an inside scoop. And so following that ordinance, we had our first meeting January 2022, I believe. And at that meeting, I was unanimously voted by my board members to be the chair of the committee. And I'm still the chair. And we actually have a meeting coming up in April. So, it's ongoing. It's, like I said, it's lifelong work. And, we've been able to get some solutions passed. We got Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu introduced to the police department, which is a non-striking use of disarmament. So it's been very fulfilling, and it's I think an amazing executive order and a great step in the right direction. It was inspired by Newark's ongoing struggle to try and get their citizen advisory board up, and it wouldn't be an advisory board, it's more so a public safety policing board, and they have way more administrative authority than the Public Safety Advisory Board does. We cannot subpoena, police officers. We can't look into police officers' private records or anything like that. But I believe the progress report and the promotion policy give us that, I don't want to say authority because it might make people nervous, but it gives a sense of accountability.
That's a good word.
Very necessary.
So with your work, How are you seeing, my husband and I have three sons who are a few years older than you are, but how do you see, gauge the involvement of other young people around you? How do you see them? Do you find that they are gravitating not necessarily to you, but to action?
Mhm.
What do you
Uh,
see?
I have like a love-hate relationship with my peers because I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm definitely tooting our own horn, but I think we are some of the most, you know, educated people that, this country has had. And that's just because we are so connected to like instant information. Like I have everything right here, like I can give me 3 seconds and I will learn something new. And so we are very privileged to be able to have instant access to information and instant access to news. And so many of my peers are very, very aware, very, very up to date when it comes to international affairs or national issues, state issues, local issues, etc. And, we can be very quick when it comes to spreading awareness. But the issue that I do have with my peers or some of my peers is that I think we can be so fast paced and we can be so interested in so many different things that a lot of times we will only get surface level knowledge of something or be involved in something on a surface level and then not follow through. And I don't want to fully blame the age of social media because, part of it is like our lack of attention span because everything just moves so quickly and there's always like something else to do or something else to learn. But I think recently in our country, we've developed like this culture of just, learn this, go to a protest, sign a petition, next. And like those things are great, but they don't tackle systemic issues. And systemic issues requires systemic, solutions, like white supremacy will not be combated with a tweet. White supremacy is combated with, DEI programs, with, further education, with, affirmative action, which is now like a taboo word for whatever reason. But, all those things are systemic answers to systemic issues. And so I think for a lot of my peers, they aren't aware that there are very much easy solutions to very difficult problems. And I think we can sometimes get caught up in this idea of like, well, like elected officials will solve it. My vote is gonna solve the problem. And like your vote is important. Our I don't even want to say ancestors, literally our aunts, uncles, and grandparents fought for our right to vote. You know what I mean? They are still very much alive and well. Some of them haven't even retired and like they fought for our right to vote. So always practice your vote. But
Yes.
I believe that your vote is only part of the solution and that you have to be willing to be active. And I think that's like the theme of the day is to be active, to attend those city council meetings, to attend those local government meetings, whether it's the school board or your mayor's having a press conference or, your governor is coming into town to talk about this, that, the third, and to ask those questions of like, okay, like this is a great idea, but how will you implement that? And you will find a lot of times people are like, because they just haven't thought about how to have a strategy, or 9 times out of 10, when you're someone that is young or looks younger than you are, they're kind of shocked that you have, I would say, the gusto or the audacity to ask these kinds of questions. So I think most of my peers are very socially minded, but I think more of us need to be socially active. And
That's
those are very two different things.
Yes, very good. That's good. So what are you planning for in the future? I know you mentioned you have a meeting coming up in April.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else you're planning? Anything you have in the wings to help the young people, to encourage them? I know you mentioned going to those meetings, becoming active.
Mhm.
How do you get them to be active? I know that you held up your phone, and you're right, everybody, not just your age group, but even the little kids who have
Yeah.
their iPhones, everybody. And it's true. Uh,
Mhm.
People in your age group probably never heard of a card catalog, which is what we had to use when we did research at high
Yeah,
school.
yeah.
So everything is instant, and we all do it. But how do we move from making that our be all and it? It's
How do we move from like spectator to a player? Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. I like the people who are in the grandstand telling the
Mhm.
player how to hit or how to
Yeah,
kick.
yeah. And it's like come down to the play field and do something. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That must be a real task.
It's it's an ask that I ask of my peers constantly. I think I think for those that are young or even older than I am that describe themselves or others have described themselves as citizen leaders, I think reach out. I think grab people by the neck and make them come in. I think a lot of times that first step is the hardest and that first step is the most daunting. Um, but once you realize the significance of not even just your words, but of your presence, of you being in the room is going to shift so much of the political and social dynamic. I think once you realize that you just being there is an action in and of itself, and then there are secondary actions after that, I think is very important. Currently, I am the youth committee director for the Citizen Service, which is a new national service. So my literal job is to reach out to my peers, to people that are a bit older than me, so like up to their mid-30s that consider themselves millennials, and to basically call to action and to tell them, guys, we have this training, which is the no blame training that I was speaking about, provided by the Citizens Campaign. And it's a college certificate training, and the whole point of the training is to teach you about local government, is to teach you about your power within local government and how you can make an impact as a non-elected leader. And I think it's beautiful to see so many of my peers that are now elected officials that are in, the House of Representatives or are mayors or, sit on school boards. I think that's, inspiring and amazing work. And, eventually, and, we see it now, there is going to be that wave of young people that are taking up those elected leadership roles because, certain people do have to retire or, move on to their next phase, to put it lightly. But I think it's also important to understand that you don't have to make a professional career out of social activism. You don't have to become a politician to be socially active, that you have power right now, right at your feet. And you can just, all you have to do is learn about it, pick it up, and do something with it. I think it's also important to understand that there are a plethora of issues that range from very, very giant, complex issues like, climate change or public safety. And then there's, issues that are as equally important but aren't as ginormous. So if you feel like, what, my town isn't accessible to those that are disabled. The trash cans are way too tall for people that are wheelchair bound, or there aren't enough ramps to get into public buildings. Those are issues that affect people every day, and someone needs to advocate for a solution to those issues. So I think understanding that there's a wide range of advocacy, there's a wide range of justice, and you just have to kind of find where your passion is, however cheesy that sounds. As long as you're passionate about something, it's going to always motivate you to stay the course, to stay dedicated to it, to advocate for it, even when you feel so defeated and so tired. For me personally, it's public safety. I think public safety affects all people. And, most particularly Black people. I have a younger brother who's 20 years old now. And, like to me, he's a baby. But to other people, that is a grown man, and I worry about how he interacts with, society, how other people interact with him, how law enforcement interacts with him. And so, you know, public safety for me is always going to be something that I'm worried about, that I will advocate for, that I will work towards. And, if that's not it for you, that's okay. If, disability rights are it for you, go for it. If mental health is it for you, go for it. If, gender equality is it, go for it. I think be bold enough to assume that you are someone that can make a change, because you are, don't let these perceptions of like, you're a young person, or like you're a woman, or you're Muslim, or you're Christian, or this, that, the third, all these labels that people like to throw at us. Don't assume that those are limiting factors, because they aren't. A lot of times, 9 times out of 10, for me personally, 10 times out of 10, they're identities that give me power. They're identities that I feel very attached to, that give me a sense of inspiration, that give me a sense of motivation, that give me a sense of purpose and belonging. And so, to all my young people that are watching, and all the non-young people that are watching, and all the people that feel young at heart,
To
please,
all the people, period, huh?
yes, all the people, period, please get involved in whatever capacity you can, in whatever feels comfortable for you, and whatever is sustainable for you.
Yes.
Involved with something that you can always go back to, and that isn't going to burn you out. And if you feel burnt out, you reach out to your community, you reach out to your friends, you reach out to your peers, you reach out to your boss that may be 30 years older, or 40 years, or 50 years older than you. That's okay. It doesn't matter. Always ask for help, always go
Always
back.
ask for help. Yes.
Yeah.
Tell us about this picture.
Oh, this picture, this was from our forum in 2023, where we launched the citizen service. At the far left is the Spelman Provost, Dr. Pamela Scott Johnson. She's amazing, beautiful. I love her. Then we have the Chancellor of Rutgers Newark, Diane Hill, another beautiful, stunning, amazing woman. In the middle, we have the infamous Harry Pazicki. He's the founder of the Citizens Campaign. He's by trade a fair housing and environmental justice lawyer. He's someone that I very much admire, because he's someone that is very aware of his privilege, and then at the same time is always using his own power and his own connections to empower other people. And he's spent his whole life doing that. Then there's me. And then at the far end, we have Bart Oates. He's a former NFL quarterback for the New York Giants, and upon his retirement has spent his life advocating for social justice and advocating for civic engagement. So those are 4 people that were on the panel of our forum, and we all spoke about the need for civic engagement and civic education, and the need to put action to philosophy, and action to theory, and action to words. And, whenever I go to those forums, I love to look at the crowd and tell them, we had a great time with the cocktails and, with the little appetizers, but you got to go home and do something now, because this was way more than just like a little get together.
Yes, yes. I want to let me go back here, because I didn't do this, but I need to put I can get it here, your contact information.
Yeah, of
How
course.
can people reach you?
So you can reach me at my work email at Samantha at thecitizenscampaign.org.
Oh, at is
At yes, ma'am. THECITIZENSCAMPAIGN.org. Or if it's the weekend, because I am a Gen Z and I believe in not checking my work email during the weekend, you can contact me at Samantha Castro 17@gmail.com. And I will respond promptly. 17 Gmail.
one?
Yes, number 1 and number 7 at gmail.com. And feel free to contact me. I promise I'm just, like I said, I'm just a girl. Feel free to contact me, ask me any questions, ask me for advice. I will give you what I can and what I know. And if I don't know it, I will ask someone else and connect you with someone else, or, ask on your behalf. I have, no shame when it comes to learning and comes to connecting with people. So, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you so much, Samantha. What a
Of
great story. Thank you so much so as I said, the show is Leafless, Not Lifeless, and you are definitely being not just an advocate for those who may seem powerless, but you've put some feet to it. You,
Yeah, I got the feet down. I'm trying to build up to like the knees, the hips. You know, we need a full body. But I'll get there one day. I'm sure of it, inshallah.
yeah, yeah. So I'm sure you're inspiring others as well. So thank you so much. Again, I'm Sharon Benjamin, host of Leafless, Not Lifeless with Sharon Benjamin. My guest today has been Samantha Castro. Her information is there. I was so impressed to meet her and to hear all she's doing and has done. And if you have a story where maybe someone has viewed you as lifeless, but you're not, you're actually growing and developing, and I'd love to share your story as well. You may contact me at leaflessnotlifeless@gmail.com. Leaflessnotlifeless@gmail.com. Again, Samantha, thank you so much for your time. Thank your boss for giving you this time to be here. And I hope to hear, and I'm sure I will hear more and see more, I'm sure.
Fingers crossed. I hope so as
And
well. Thank you very much.
yes, and for your inspiring others. Thank you so much. Have a good one. And for
You.
those of you, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Until next time, again, Sharon Benjamin with Leafless and Not Lifeless, Leafless Not Lifeless at gmail.com. See you the next time.